super interesting. And
Looks dense.
I think what it's fucking dense. It's going to take me a while to get through. But what we said there about the British word rollicking versus American words, I think your accent's super interesting. It's quite a weird way to start a podcast.
It's weird.
But your accent kind of crosses the bridge from America and the UK. It's got a delicious melting pot, your accent. And where I'm going with this is I want to explore. One of my fascinations is the difference between British people dreaming and their ability to think they can do something with themselves versus Americans. And I think it's a really interesting lens. I think obviously most people into this podcast are super kind of go-getters. This chapter's called Go-Getters. But I'd love to explore kind of, America versus the UK. But I want to open with this chapter, Nick, because he kind of talks about what happened post the war and how America got this resurgence for kind of the American dream entrepreneurship. And he says, as one historian put it, of the country's good fortune, America at the close of the Great War was a Cinderella magically clothed in the most stunning dress at the ball, a ball to which Cinderella had not even been invited. Immense gains with no visible price tag seemed to be the American destiny. This was not only a mood, it translated into a national ethos of hopefulness, heedlessness that gave rise in turn to a new national type who seemed to embody post-war hopefulness, the go-getter, perhaps epitomized and characterized by the 1920s comedian Harold blah, 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 blah. And he talks about brash can-do obliviousness. And I think, and what does he say here? He says, the power of his will to realize his dreams, guts and goodness in tandem. And I think that page sums up the American culture. But then also, as I've walked in here today or this evening, and I've spoken to Rom, there is this kind of guts and goodness and this go-getter attitude, this energy. I suppose the first question, we'll start with you, Teddie, and then Marrissa, because we'll get your perspective. But what is the edge you get being an American or living in America, setting up a brand on British soil?
It's kind of ironic because you called it an edge, I think. Was that what we used? The word what we use is hunger. And I think the biggest thing...
Hungry podcast.
And that's why it's ironic. Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is when buyers or retailers meet us for the first time, they're like, what are you guys on? Like, where is that energy from? And, yes, it's from the product, but I think it's also for a passion for entrepreneurship. And a lot of people listening to this podcast will get it and will share that same passion. So for us, when we think about America, entrepreneurship there is very much celebrated. When you say you're starting a business, your friends support you, they buy the product, they want you to win. And I think the market more generally also do. When VCs invest there, they have a more, I think visionary approach to investing, whereas the VCs that we've spoken to in the UK are way more focused on the downside. So I think it's a very much a cultural difference. And we're dreamers. We like to think, please God, we're even visionaries. But yeah, we celebrate entrepreneurship.
When you said visionary, the VCs are more visionary. I think that paints the picture perfectly. Whereas the British are more downside. Go into that a little bit more. Maybe you want to say that, Marrissa.
Well, I was going to say actually something a little different, because that said, we both worked in America following our graduation from college and decided that wasn't for us, that kind of culture. And I think that it would be irresponsible to not discuss the costs of that hustle culture, because I know for myself, I was the most depressed that I've ever felt in my life working in finance in New York. And I was just on this nonstop hamster wheel of stress, showing up to work, not liking who I was working with, and feeling like I was trying to achieve a goal that was so far away that I could never achieve. I think, though, that might just be more of a corporate thing than anything. And entrepreneurship is definitely more celebrated in America.
But what you said there is when you're in finance, there's a goal you have to achieve.
Yeah.
The goal is as in when you're the corporate finance route. But then what you said there about dreams, I think there's a very big difference between when you've got your own dream, dreams give you life. Someone said that on a podcast. I love that quote. Dreams give you life. And whereas a goal in finance, like I've got to get to fucking climb the ladder to get here, then here, then here. Let's go back into that period in New York and like talk me through. I think a lot of brands are started with you need to kind of hit rock bottom to spring back up. We're already, when we're doing this podcast, like the rocket ship is very much in orbit, right? I'd love to go back into kind of these nascent periods of the brand. You both in New York. What's the
No, so Teddie's a Brit.
Yeah, so I went to university in Philadelphia, then moved to Los Angeles, worked in management consulting there, moved back to the UK, still working management consulting, but have always been a dreamer. You know, I was the kid at university that was always like, I'd love to start my own business. And so for me, I was a kid who had also seen every episode of Dragon's Den. So for me, it wasn't a case as to whether I was going on Dragon's Den. It was with what business and when. Like that was part of the dream. That was part of the plan.
I have a question. Did you think he was American?
I knew there was a
link
because I haven't even. I was speaking to your mum.
Yeah.
That sounds really dodgy. Out to my mum. I was when you guys launched at London Coffee Festival.
Oh yeah.
Like I was literally, in Old Truman Brewery. It's like a fucking rave in there. You can't breathe.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to your mum for like literally about an hour and a half, chewing her ear off about all things matcha, and then obviously now this is the brand.
Yeah.
And she was saying to me, that her sons had lived in America, but I thought, you were kind of half.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I wanted to
No,
start
it's just university and work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm the American here. I'm the New Yorker.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting though, on the point of like the difference between America and the UK, specifically with entrepreneurship, is, and I put this out on LinkedIn, I've had a few comments recently which were like, oh, nice to see you, Teddie. Haven't seen you in a while. You think, like, are you too good for us? Or, oh, you're an entrepreneur. Please give me some tips. But in a bit of a sarky kind of like, I don't know, not nice way. Whereas in America, people celebrate that entrepreneurship. I feel like in the UK, there is a certain amount of excitement around a brand when it's very much at the beginning and people feel like they haven't really had much success. But then when you do start to have a little bit of success, a little bit of growth, it's almost like, oh, fuck, I don't want them to be.
I find it endlessly fascinating how the Brits are so self-deprecating.
Yeah.
And like, you know, we call it taking the fucking piss, right? Like, but we're so self-deprecating. But then when, and we have tall poppy syndrome, tall poppy syndrome, the tall poppy gets cut off. So it's like, don't get too big for your boots is the obvious expression.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, don't get too big for your boots. But then, and you're so right, they'll support you. And then as soon as you're at the top, they'll rip you down. And I interviewed a chef last week. That happened to be got a huge following on social, amazing restaurant in West London, got ripped down.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel in America, it's the opposite.
You know, it's interesting as well. So we launched the brand on Kickstarter. You're familiar with Kickstarter?
I probably should know that with this podcast.
So Kickstarter is an amazing platform for people who are kind of testing out concepts.
Right.
Basically, you can throw out an idea. You obviously have to have somewhat of a plan and maybe like a prototype available, but you can test out a concept and get people to buy it before it's actually produced and then use the pre-sales to make the product. So that's actually what we did. And we launched in April of 2021 on Kickstarter for this concept. And I remember when we first launched, for whatever reason, we were able to ship to America. We had more American friends purchasing our products before launch than we did Brits. And I thought that was so telling of the level of support that people would get in the UK for pursuing something entrepreneurial. Because I was like, the fact that their friends aren't even buying is shocking to me.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Honestly, means the absolute world to me. I'd be so grateful for a small favor, please. It is so hard growing a YouTube channel. It is so bloody hard. If you please enjoy these videos, just click the subscribe button. More subscribers equals bigger guests equals better conversations, and hopefully you can learn more as you build your food and drink brand. Thank you so much.
I mean, even last week, something we put out on LinkedIn about having a videographer to capture the moment and showcase the journey. Someone commented, that's not vision, that's narcissism. And I'm just like, why are you sitting there at your desk and just putting out such like negative? People love our content. People watch our content. People get enjoyment from our content. You know, we have cancer survivors that drink our product as an energy boost. We have people that suffer from PTSD and can't drink other energy products and drink the product as an aid. And it's just like, there's enough negativity in the world. So as a brand, what we stand for is spreading positive energy. So whether you like our product or not, whether you, like Marrissa and I or not, hopefully you walk away having listened to this podcast, at least feeling the passion and energy that comes out of us. And hopefully that's inspiring to you on your own journey.
And you know, it's interesting. In this industry, I think it is one of the most welcoming, positive, friendly industries that you could possibly be in. However, I do think that sometimes you get brands that are a bit competitive and they get a little annoyed when they see something positive celebrated on LinkedIn or something. I think that, you know, all challenger brands who make it help pave the way for future challenger brands, right? And so we celebrate success of other brands in our space, even if they're in the energy drink space, because it's just growing the market. It's helping show that challenger brands actually have a chance at making it like the big dogs, right?
It's the positive energy, positive sum game, right? It's like people, the bigger the category grows, the bigger you grow, everyone wins. And I think, again, that's very much a feast mindset, and it's like everyone, you know, there's enough to go around for everyone. Whereas I think in the UK, and again, I think you're so right, Marrissa, not in our little weird microcosm of challenger food and drink, 99.9% of people are super positive. I'm talking more as like on a bigger macro level, but I think on a bigger macro level, people are way more fucking in the UK famine mindset. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's not enough to go around, and I think you're so right, like trying to pull people down. I suppose the flip side of this is, what do you think the British kind of sardonicness and like kind of piss taking, how do you think that can benefit American founders? Like what do you think American founders can get from that?
I think there's something very powerful to sarcasm and taking kind of, I guess, the piss out of yourself. Yeah. Because it just makes things less serious. I think that there is a very serious nature to work and to entrepreneurship in America. Because maybe it's because there's more money on the line. I'm not quite sure. And it just feels it feels probably maybe a little less fun. I think maybe in the more entrepreneurial landscape in the UK, people are happy to be a bit more goofy, try things, experiment. Whereas in the US, maybe there's a bit more at stake, given that a lot of the time, especially in food and beverage, a lot of the businesses, the startups are funded by VCs and by PE. So I think maybe they have less room to experiment and try things out, be goofy.
Yeah, because one of my, as I said right at the beginning, one of my endless fascinations is the relationship between the Brits and the Americans, and like you know, in everything we benefit each other so well.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
In music, when Bob Dylan met John Lennon, the Beatles met John Lennon, is they're both their music by two different cultures but similar colliding made both their music better, and I think you can learn. I think you want the big dreamer, but you want the taking the piss. That's a delicious little alchemy right there. Yeah. What how do you guys dream? Because I think there's a big difference between founders dream here in the soul to getting people upstairs like Ron, who's clearly has been infused with that dream. Like, how do you do that?
Can I just comment on that? I think it's very frustrating to have an idea and a dream, and for that to only live on paper or to live in your head. It's a very safe way to have a dream, because the dream is alive for as long as you don't fail, right? And as soon as you start to act on that dream and execute against that plan and that dream, then that's where the risk is in that dream dying. So for example, for me, I always wanted to be a professional footballer. And the day that I got an injury that meant I couldn't play football anymore was the day that my dream of becoming a professional footballer died. The way that I think we inspire dreaming at PerfectTed, at least, is through action and execution. It's like if you go to the gym. If you go to the gym and you don't see any results, you don't see yourself getting a little bit fitter, or you start running and you don't see your time getting a little bit better on a 5K, it's a little bit demoralizing. I think as humans, we're inspired by seeing positive results against a positive action. And look, having said that, you send out 100 emails to buyers and retailers, maybe you don't get any responses, but I guarantee you, if you refine that process and you keep going, you're persistent, you'll at least get a response and you'll improve. And until you test and learn and improve against, so the plan that you'd originally drawn up to execute against that dream. Sorry, this is a long-winded way.
Keep going, man. Yes.
Winded way of saying, just fucking execute. And the team upstairs know that. There are collabs, there are giveaways, there are social content, there are products that we will launch that don't work. But unless you try, we'll never know. And if we don't try, someone else will try.
Yep.
And that's a missed opportunity.
We really believe in those 1% gains. So actually every week, what we do at the end of the week is meet as a team and we all discuss the 1% gain that we achieved that week and 1% that we're trying to achieve next week. And it's a way that we can hold ourselves accountable, but keep each other accountable as well.
What was last week's?
Ooh, what was last week's?
I can go for mine.
Yeah. So this is on an individual basis.
Weekly.
And does that filter into like as a macro team basis, or is it?
No, it's individual goals. So it's what
Right,
1% thing did you do better last week, and what 1% thing are you focusing on for next week? For me, it's there is a clear correlation between, if you're trying to grow a community, between the amount of good quality content you put in and how fast that community grows. I will be posting on LinkedIn 5 days a week for the next 52 weeks.
I think that's mine as well.
And you will not see 5 days a week. You will see a post from Marrissa and I.
Yeah.
And it's that relentless consistency. And it encourages you, it forces you to be creative. It forces you to keep in touch with what's going on in the market and testing out different marketing messages. So that's
I have to say, I've actually been consistently writing now for 2 weeks. And I feel more educated, more eloquent. I feel like I've been challenging my brain to think outside of the box and look for different vocabulary than I would usually have in my vernacular. I feel like I just feel all round more educated, better.
So obviously I write every week. I have a newsletter and I've been writing LinkedIn, same as you guys. And it's interesting while I've doing these sort of just going completely AWOL with these conversations is we've kind of got to where we started is that writing is a way to dream.
Yeah.
Writing is, and I love Rick Rubin's got a quote, which is you've got to submerge. And when you write, like you can't, I do it with loads of like blasting techno going in because I need my brain to shut up. Like that's weirdly shuts up my brain.
What artists do you like?
Marco Carola, Jamie Jones, some sort of Ibiza mix will shut down that annoyance. And then leaves my left brain just to go dancing quite literally. And all these beautiful ideas come charging in. But that moment, and I do it first thing in the morning, I'd love to know what your kind of creative process is, allows you to dream. And there's a founder from a jeans brand who's been on the podcast called Hyatt Denim.
Yeah.
Who's super interesting
Their
guy.
newsletter is amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, so David Hyatt, absolute G. And he writes every day. And he says every founder should write. Because it allows you to just... There's no new line forms when you're submerged. There's no,
I also think that someone else said this on another podcast, which I really resonated with. It's like some people can be amazing orators and it can sound amazing when you speak about something. But I think until you write it down, or when you write it down, it's really easy to see where the gaps in your reasoning and your logic are. And if, there are some times where I'll write an amazing hook for a LinkedIn post and I'll start to beef that out with a different message or kind of beef that story out. And I realized that actually, this doesn't make sense. And that may have been an amazing hook or amazing thought in my mind, but until I tried to flesh it out, I couldn't understand why it wouldn't make sense.
So back to your point about dreaming, in addition to writing, I think another kind of tool that I implement in my dreaming toolkit is manifestation, and not in the woo-woo sense of manifestation. I think
So I'm not, you know what I mean? This was a perfect example of the word manifestation to British people was like, it's like, manifesting, what you on about, mate?
Yeah,
That's some
exactly.
voodoo shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
But it's like, my initial reaction was that. But anyway, yeah.
But it's combining manifestation with action. And I really do believe that by putting things out into the world, whether it's actually like saying it or even just having physical signs of it, you're holding yourself accountable as well to make that happen. And so I can give you an example. I remember before we went on the Den, there was an episode that Steven Bartlett did with Matt Hancock, and they had another drinks brand, I won't mention the name, on the table, and I photoshopped it to have PerfectTed on the table instead. And we went on and we gave it our all. We got 5 offers from all the dragons, accepted an offer from Steven, and fast forward almost a year later, Steven had PerfectTed on his podcast, Drinking It with Aubrey Marcus. And so that for me felt like such validation that this tactic works. It's the same way that when I was applying to grad school in the UK, I was so desperate to get out of my old job. And I really wanted to get in. And I sounds silly, but I went out to a local shop, got myself a raincoat, and it was like, it's going to be rainy in London, you know, so I'm going to need this one day. And for me, those signs help.
What would you, because you've had such a fast rocket ship trajectory, what advice would you give to someone who may be listening to this, who is trying to link manifestation to execution? Because I think that's a gorgeous link up. I think if you do one or the other, if you do one without the other, you're going in the wrong direction. It's like trying to steer the ship without knowing where you're going. Yeah. But what would you say to someone who's listening to this, who is putting the effort in, isn't necessarily getting the results, maybe in like a category, and this isn't me to be disparaging against category, but maybe a category like hard seltzer, which isn't the rage anymore.
Yeah.
What would you say to them? How do they link manifestation to action, execution?
Well, this might be an unpopular opinion, but
I love this. Keep going.
but I would before you can even get to that stage, I would do some reflection and think, okay, if this isn't working, why isn't it working? Are you in a category, or are you trying to do something in a category that's in decline? Do you have a product that isn't innovative? Is something up with your branding? I would think first, is there anything that is like glaring me in the face that is so obvious to other people that isn't working for me, that is kind of a sign that I shouldn't be pursuing this idea? And whether that's you doing some deep reflection or asking people who are close to you and actually want to see you succeed, like your family, your close friends, I would first suggest doing that. But because I think when we apply manifestation to action, we are confident that whatever we're trying to apply ourselves to will work. And because we've done the research and we have the evidence that it has worked before. So the reason why I felt like I could buy that raincoat and it would help, for whatever reason, get myself into the right mentality of getting myself to London and getting into school, was because I had previously successfully applied to a university and gotten in. And that for me was enough evidence and gave me the confidence that I could manifest my way into this new situation. And I think equally, we felt like we were going to go onto the den and nail it. And I think having that confidence that we were going to do that, it just made me that much more like dedicated to making sure that that was going to happen by making that picture. I know that sounds kind of silly, but I think you need to know deep down that you are onto something and that you have the capability of doing it.
I'm also going to offer an unpopular opinion. I don't think it's mind-blowing to think that, and this is the way that I think about growth, or at least success, is it's 5% idea, 5% luck, and 90% execution, or somewhere along those lines. And the way I think about that is around increasing the surface area of getting lucky. You know, there's a lot of people that talk about this. I truly believe that if you are in the game long enough, you will get opportunities. You will get lucky. And if you're constantly innovating, say, for example, you've launched a product and you're not having the success you wanted, if you pivot and you follow the data, you follow the research, you follow the advice you're getting from good quality people, and you pivot and you keep moving forward, you will get opportunities. You will get buyers that respond. They may not respond on the third email. You know, I think one of the challenging things about the content we put out is people think that buyers just respond to our emails. They do not. Even after we've had 7 million eyeballs on our product and brand following Dragon's Den, you know, I won't say who, but there was a retailer that did not respond. I think I counted for like 35 emails. And, you know, those weren't 35 emails over 35 weeks. Those were over 2 years. So I wasn't spamming their inbox, and there's a right and wrong way to do it. But I think we do not want to give the illusion that any of this has been easy just because it's happened relatively quickly. And that we don't want to give the illusion that it continues to be easy, because it's not. And you know that better than anyone.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's... I was talking to someone the other day about how the brand... Because your trajectory's gone so quick. Like, you know, some brands will wait 10 years for a Tesco.
We grew 14 times from year 1 to year 2.
What have been I believe a founder... Just like the brand has to scale, the founder has to scale with in terms of weaknesses, skill sets, learning. When I last saw you, Marrissa, was at Bread and Jam before, just after you've been on the Den. There's still 3 of you. Yeah. Now office 10 people. What have been the hardest bits about your personal growth and development that have had to match the speed of PerfectTed growing? I have just discovered a secret weapon. Please, please, please don't tell anyone. This secret weapon helps you get listed, stay listed, and most importantly, grow. This secret weapon is being used by absolutely banging brands like Bold Bean Co, PerfectTed, Neat, Trip, and Cheeky Panda. No wonder they're absolutely smashing it. But look, are you ready to get your mitts on this secret weapon and absolutely smash it too? I am thrilled, so thrilled to announce our brand new podcast partner, Northstar. What is Northstar, I hear you thinking? Northstar is a monthly subscription to an online platform giving you access to category data, category insights, anytime, any place, anywhere. It's basically the Netflix for challenger brands. It levels the playing field. Why do you need category data? Well, the first thing is making your pitch speak the buyers and retailers language is so important. It's going to help you unlock more listings, unlock deeper distribution with existing clients, back the right MPD, and actually understand how your competition is performing. But the even better news, are you ready to rock and roll at your next range review? You no longer need to hire a full-time category manager. Instead, just parachute in Northstar when your next Waitrose, Sainsbury's or Tesco range reviews coming up. They're your outsourced in-house partner. Save money. Their team will come in, they'll help you prep, plan and smash your next range review. I'm so excited to be partnering with Northstar. Check them out in the episode description below. Delighted to announce the extension of our partnership with the wonderful Billy and Paul from Mackenzie Jones, but even more exciting, they have just launched a brand new brand as part of Mackenzie Jones called MKJ Ignite. MKJ Ignite is a recruitment firm which specializes full shebang, focus entirely on challenge brand space. They work with some incredible brands, Lucky Saint, Good Rays, Purdy and Fig, Hunter and Gather, and Real Superfoods. They can support with your hiring needs across all levels, top to bottom, junior entry-level jobs, all the way through up to MD and CEO level. So if you're looking for a field sales stomper, a sales wizard, an ops guru, a supply chain sensei, you name it, MKJ Ignite can help you out. And look, if you're looking to wet your whistle, ignite your curiosity, then check out the poddy we recorded with them back in July. Laden with wisdom, all about like do's and don'ts of hiring and like how to create the perfect job description. You will love it.
Yeah, I can talk to some of that. Oh my God, I think that I constantly go through periods of getting lost. Like it probably happens every couple of months.
Especially getting lost.
Feeling lost. Feeling very lost and not knowing what my role is, which is great in some ways because it means that you're making yourself redundant by hiring a great team. But also the challenges become different. And so because we're not facing the same challenges, you almost feel like you're that founder who's in their bedroom starting the brand again because you're facing a new challenge that you've never seen before. Another great example that I don't know why I feel comfortable sharing this, but I cried last week in the office. I can't remember the last time I cried.
Right here
on this sofa.
Because
of there is so much pressure that I think we put on ourselves. Pressure that, by the way, there's been amazing things that have happened since we went on TV. But at the same time, you know, we cycled to a meeting today. Someone comes up in the street and goes, "Oh, PerfectTed." And that's great. And it's amazing for the brand. But it also means there is a lot of pressure because if things don't go well, then, you know, that's a reflection on you and there's no hiding. But I also think on the flip side, that's our biggest superpower because now that we're out there, now that people know about my dating life, they've seen us on TV, they know we're the founders of the brand. it's like there's no hiding. And so that kind of fires you up in a way. And so going back to our previous conversation about how do you execute against that dream, for me, it's like putting yourself out there, because I think that's the best way to hold yourself accountable.
Building in public.
Yeah, so that's so we're good. There's a whole delta of curiosity to go down there, especially as we're getting this recorded. But I think what you've said there about, there's a quote I love, and I heard it on a podcast by Chris Williamson. I don't know if it's
Modern Wisdom.
Yeah.
He's amazing. Yes, I'm trying to get him on. I'm speaking to his team. He's just launched. I was going to say neurotic. It's called his new tonic. He's said a quote which I fucking love, which is pressure is a privilege. And I've done that with myself. Is with this podcast is like Monday, Friday. That's podcast Monday, newsletter Friday. But I'm not missing that beat, that cadence. And as you say, it forces creativity comes from constraint. And I think by having that militant schedule, and actually this links to manifestation, because if you're constantly putting out in the world, it's creating more pressure, which means you kind of got to do it. And there's I'm trying to get to this dreaming things. It feels like you guys have got such big dreams, but then linking it to the execution, and it is build in public.
For sure.
I also think it's the rules that we set ourselves. So we're really good as humans at following rules that other people set, but like, why don't we leverage rules to lead our own life? So a great example of this is, if you go out and you say, I don't think I want to drink tonight, and you say you're not drinking, and your friends are like, come on, have a drink. Go on, you know you want to drink.
Yeah.
You're more likely to have a drink than if you say, I categorically do not drink. And so, for example, me, I'm training for a marathon. I do not drink. And so I've had times where people are like, oh, go on, have a drink. And I'm like, I have a rule. I do not drink. With LinkedIn, I have a rule. I post every single day. I have a rule. I go to the gym X times a week. And some people may say that's a very rigid way to live your life, but I actually think there's so much satisfaction in discipline. And when things don't go wrong, when things go wrong, it's not a case of, oh, maybe I didn't put in the work. It's just a case of, okay, maybe I need to refine those rules. Maybe I need to refine that strategy, rather than stressing about, oh, I didn't put in enough work. There are so many founders that I guarantee you are listening to this podcast thinking, I could work harder. And I don't think that's always a solution. I don't always think it's you can work harder. Just maybe you need to work differently.
And just set rules, personal rules.
Yeah.
I think it's not about, I know this sounds so cliche, not working harder and smarter. It's not even that. It's like, it's the personal discipline. I've probably going to bore listeners to death, but I'm 3 months off booze now.
Congrats, that's amazing.
And smoking, vaping, the full shebang.
Amazing.
A bit like getting way too into it. I'm going to go back. So I'm excited. I'm excited for a Guinness, especially as it's getting cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of just that, there's a quote I love, which is moderation by Montague, which is moderation is harder than abstinence. But actually just saying no, you just take it off the table. Take it off the fucking table. It's so much easier. What would you say some of your personal rules? Because what I'm finding fascinating is how you've got this fun, bubbly brand, but internally, and like in the founder's soul, is this ruthless discipline. What would you say some of your rules are?
Work related or personal?
I think they're two intertwined.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, my work is personal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would say doing something for me every single day is a non-negotiable. And that could either be calling a friend and having a really nice conversation, going to the gym. This all sounds very, very, basic and somewhat cliche. But I think that if I don't do something for me, I don't feel like I can put my best self forward. It's the same way that people say you can't love someone else until you love yourself. So showing myself self-love, I guess, and ensuring that every single day, even if I miss the gym, I'll call a girlfriend and have a really great chat. Or I will make myself a really wholesome meal. So whether it's just spending a little bit of time either by myself or with a loved one, working out, cooking, whatever it is, that is a non-negotiable for me. And I must do that. Otherwise, I will go crazy. And there have been times when I have not done that and my mental health has gone, woo.
I kind of alluded to some of the rules I have. The one that I'm trying to figure out that I'd love from any listeners or from you is the reason that I was crying last week is because of the pressure that I put on myself. We're really fortunate in that we don't have external investors other than Steven Bartlett from Dragon's Den. So the pressure that we put on ourselves is very much self-inflicted.
Talk to me about that pressure. Like, what are the voices in your head when you're down here about to cry.
So-
So I think it will be very cathartic for myself more than anything. Yeah.
I think before we started the brand, if someone told me they had anxiety, I would have been like, nah, you're just nervous. Come on. But until you wake up in the morning and feel like you have a brick on your chest, like that to me was the first manifestation of anxiety. And so when I was sitting here in this chair, it was a culmination of so many different things, and actually nothing to do with business performance, more just like, I don't know why, something had happened. And the thought of something being ripped out from beneath my feet, business related, that we'd fought so hard for, was just like, I mean, as an example, every time, and people will relate to this, every time that you get a new buyer, scares the shit out of me. Not because I'm worried that the buyer won't like us or whatever, but you just never know. And we've worked so hard to earn that space on shelf. We've worked so hard to build a brand where, you know, people respond to our emails. For example, Shani was saying the other day, anyone who works at PerfectTed is going to get a massive shock when they go and work at another food and beverage brand, because we've invested so hard in creating a brand whereby when you sign off with the PerfectTed email, you will get a higher response rate, fortunately, than you know, when we started originally, because we'd spent that time in investing in a brand that people want to support, or that people like, or that people hopefully respect. And so I guess what I'm saying is the crying came from the pressure, and the pressure came from anxiety, and the anxiety came from the feeling of not wanting to lose what we've built. And I don't know if that will ever go away, but I can definitely find ways to deal with that better.
What are some of those ways?
That's a good question.
Going on dates and killing.
Yeah, exactly. But that's actually part of it. I think I've underinvested massively on things outside of work for the past 2-3 years. Everything from like things like dating to I go to the gym, but the biggest thing I felt like I'd lost is a sense of community. You know, I don't play on any sports teams. And I think that also is what drives Marrissa and I to build our own community. Yes, to make other people feel like they have a community, but honestly, probably selfishly to feel like we have a community too. And so for me, it was like I'd lost my sense of otherness beyond the brand. And I think it's very dangerous when you start defining yourself by the brand. I saw what happened with football when I had to stop playing. And I actually met with a sports psychologist who the university provided. And he said, stop thinking of yourself as Teddie the soccer player. You're Teddie who plays soccer. And I need to stop thinking of myself as Teddie of PerfectTed and Teddie who, I don't know, who works for PerfectTed or works. Do you know what I mean? It's like separating yourself from.
Yeah, I mean, my self-worth is directly, which is fucked, related to this podcast. You know what I mean? Which is like, and so I've stopped, in terms of rules, stopped looking at views. I just don't even look at it. I don't, because also then it dictates the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I've always wanted to be present, curious. Those two things happen. Whereas before, it's like, oh, that episode to do, I'm going to ask those questions. And it's like, you're going away from this, do you know what I mean? And I think there's having that separation between you and your brand is always the hardest thing.
It's really hard because we all have an ego, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to feed that ego, and views will feed your ego. Likes on a LinkedIn post will feed your ego, right? I think what I have tried to do personally is look at certain activities that would usually be more ego-led as business enhancing and brand building. And so if my LinkedIn post doesn't slap, if it gets like 20 likes, right? Maybe a year ago, that would have hit me differently. I would have felt self-conscious. Oh, I'm a bad writer. That was a bad idea. I shouldn't have shared that. All these feelings of self-doubt would come flooding in. But today I'm like, hey, I did it again. I was consistent. I posted. Who cares if I got 20 likes? At least I did it. It's gonna add up eventually. You know, these gains.
And also, you never know. I did one post which got like 5 likes, but that one like,
the quality.
Well, the guy today who commented on it was heads up the do lectures for David Hyatt. He got three videos, 3 likes, just post. But I think that works. I never do these kind of in like any kind of order, but I'd love to go back to like the evening or the day that you guys first met. Like, where was that? Paint the picture, set the scene.
Can I paint it?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, because I think we have different perspectives of this. So, actually, we may have met when we were 10. It's unconfirmed, but we...
Go into that.
So, I'm American. I'm from New York. Teddie's British. He's from London. And his family would frequent this place in Florida every year for holiday. And I happen to go to the same place every year with my family. And I would say that there were probably only like 200 people who consistently went to this place. So out of everyone in the world, for us to both end up at this place is a bit odd, right? I'm not a religious person, but I do believe that the universe works in odd ways. And I think the fact that we're now in this situation is telling of that. But we actually met the first day of university at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And I would say it was really different back then. 18 years old, straight out of high school. I guess I had a bit of an ego. I think you did as well, probably. And I thought I was being funny. I was wearing athleisure, I remember. And Teddie was on the... Athleisure, like...
Athletic leisure.
Lululemon, I don't know. I was
Athleisure,
wearing like
yeah.
It's for people that want to look like they work out, but they don't work out.
Yeah, athleisure, I like that.
And I may have had headphones in or something. I don't remember. But Teddie was playing on the football team at Penn, the soccer team in America. And he came up to me and was like, "Oh, are you going to the gym?" And I said, "No, I just want people to think I'm sporty," as a joke, right? And he was like, "This girl is so obnoxious." And then, yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
What was your gut feeling about each other when you first met?
I honestly was just like, who is this obnoxious person? And then she started dating my brother, and then we became friends, and the rest is just...
So how did you meet? It's Levi?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, such a good name. What, I'm not saying this all the time. But what, how did you meet Levi? What was the...
at a frat party, Marissa and Levi met, and then...
Sorry, is that in...
Fraternity party.
What is that?
It's like Greek life, sorority, fraternity. It's like, have you seen Animal House?
I know what a frat party... What is a frat, though? Is it like... You don't have it in the UK.
It's a brotherhood now.
Yeah.
It's just like...
It's like old school life. I'm old school.
Yeah.
It's like a club. It's like a...
It just seems so weird, man.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Stuff that we probably can't show.
Yeah. It's a great way to meet people, but I saw Levi from across the room and I thought he was really cute. And so I approached him and I said, "Hey, do you want to go shotgun a beer?" Had never shotgunned a beer in my life. Had no idea how to do it. I just thought I sounded cool. Again, probably... I don't know what this is.
Were you in your athleisure doing this?
I was not. But I had some weird one-liners back then. Like, whoa, that's like...
If you don't know what shotgunning a beer is, Google it. It's...
That's when you...
Exactly. Yeah. And that's it. 8 years now.
And then at what point... So you become kind of great mates. Well, obviously you're well, now, you're married yet?
No, we're getting married next month.
Oh, amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What are the steps to you thinking, right, the world needs a matcha drink. Let's create PerfectTed. Talk me through those 3 months, 3 steps.
So glad that you asked that. So, actually, it's around this time when I'm 18 and meeting Teddie and Levi for the first time that
What year is this? Sorry.
This is 2015, 2016.
Cool.
But this was probably in 2016. So university was hard. It was definitely a shock to the system because it was much harder than high school was for me. And you're kind of like, you go from being a big fish in a small pond to a little fish in a freaking massive pond, right? You are nothing that you used to be, or so you think. And so I was relying heavily on caffeine to keep me going and to like basically fuel my 12-hour study sessions in the library. But it turns out that the coffee and the energy drinks that I was consuming were actually making me feel like shit and actually causing me to be less productive than I would be had I not even been drinking them. And I think this was definitely exacerbated by the fact that I have anxiety and ADHD, and caffeine is terrible for anxiety, specifically coffee. And ADHD is also, you know, it's really hard to deal with if you are too jittery. You can't focus if you're like shaking out of your chair. So a friend one day approached me in the library and she was like, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Like you need to try this. And she recommended matcha. I'd never heard of it. She told me it was a kind of green tea that gave you energy, but a different type of energy that made you feel a bit more calm, leveled, no jitters, no crashes. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a try, and wasn't expecting much. And genuinely, again, sounds cliche, but it had the most profound impact on my life, because I was like, I rely on caffeine. And actually, so ADHD, there's a lot of research that shows that there's something related to like a dopamine deficiency when you have ADHD, and caffeine indirectly helps to activate the dopaminergic system in your brain, but it also L-theanine, which is in matcha, also does as well. But again, it counteracts the stimulatory effects of caffeine. So I can kind of get into that in a second. But anyways, switch to this amazing source of caffeine. And when I moved to the UK, I was really surprised by how few matcha options that there were on the market, because in America, it was so prevalent. I could find it at my local cafe. I could find it at the supermarket. I could find it everywhere. And I could find it in RTDs as well, ready to drink beverages. And so I kind of looked around, and Teddie actually got pretty hooked on matcha as well when he was living in LA. Because again, it's a big thing in America. And we all moved into a house together, fast forward 5 years from the time I was 18, so when I was 23, and we started making matcha in the house every day. And we were like, damn, this is good stuff, because we would buy our own from like Japan. And then we were like, wow, why can't we find these in cafes? Why can't we get this in the supermarket here locally? And then I was like, okay, well, you know, I also kind of want another option. Looked around at the natural energy space, thinking that there must be some sort of drink that offers a different type of caffeine that I can tolerate. And there wasn't. There were natural options that used natural ingredients, but there was no type of caffeine that I myself could tolerate. And so we were like, this feels like a really ripe opportunity. I was in grad school looking for some sort of idea, and Teddie was at his previous job, not the happiest, I would say. And we kind of just were like, should we do this? And I think like haphazardly, we were like, yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. And incorporated a business. Really easy to incorporate a business, by the way. Did not realize how easy that was. And went on this journey, and it's kind of...
It's mad. It's just fascinating seeing, you know, we were talking about dreaming at the beginning, and how, Teddie, you said that, you know, you were wanted to be a footballer, that not failed, but it just didn't work out. On to the next thing, but you said I always knew I was going to be the founder of a business. I was going to go on Dragon's Den, and I didn't know what the idea was, and that, you know, that eventually happened. So you're making it at home. When does the actual birth of PerfectTed happen? Because I always find that month or 2-3 months super interesting.
Yeah, I think this is where also some of the listeners hopefully can, and ultimately, like, what we want is for this podcast to drive value for whoever's listening. So I'll probably give like a high level, but it was very much like, had the kitchen recipe, then worked with a recipe developer. We worked with SH Foodie, who were fantastic.
Still work with them.
Still work with them. And then we did a small production run, tested the product out at a trade show, got some really good feedback, and very early on got interest from Holland and Barrett, who actually reached out to us through Instagram. So that was our first proper listing. And that was probably the moment where we were like, okay, wow, we really have created something quite innovative, and probably are on track to creating a brand that stands out, given the fact that we had no outbound sales team. We hadn't emailed Holland and Barrett. They'd actually found us.
I think a really important part of our journey, though, has been when we have to pivot, actually, because the idea that we initially had for PerfectTed is not the product that we have here today.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So when we were doing our kitchen recipes, we were like, we need to can a matcha latte and a matcha tea. Realized that it would be a bit more difficult to can, so we switched to a Tetra Pak, which is what Vita Coco is in, and went down this process for about 6 months doing R&D on a matcha latte and a tea in a Tetra Pak. And I remember we launched on Kickstarter with this product.
I've seen this, yeah.
And pre-sold 10,000 pounds worth of product in 23 hours, which was pretty cool. Pre-sold a bit more after that. But then we got a call from the manufacturer about a month later, and they were like, we're really sorry we had to push out your production date to 2023 or something like that. And we were just like, what the heck? Like we need to put something out. We just pre-sold all this product, and we can't deliver on it. What are we going to do? And so we thought about it, and we're like, well, really the intention was to create like a caffeine alternative. The most logical format for that is actually an energy drink, because that's what we're trying to do. And by pairing it with fruity flavors, we were making it really accessible for non-matcha drinkers to try. And
I think one of the lessons there is that when things go really, really, really wrong, there often is a silver lining. You just have to look close enough. For us, that product at that time would not have worked. So the fact that the manufacturer pulled out and the fact that we'd lost a bit of money on that recipe was the best thing that ever happened to us. And I also think there's another, I normally have a notepad, but I want to say this before I forget, because I think there are a couple other things that I think hopefully listeners will get value out of. Is one, I think there's a difference between real innovation and fake innovation. Fake innovation is doing something different that no one cares about, or that people won't pay a premium for if you're creating a more premium product that offers a slight difference in benefit. So for example, for us, if there's something else in the market that delivers on the functionality that we were going after, then what we were creating wouldn't have been truly different. And I think there are a lot of challenger brands that are like, for example, if I took peanut butter, I don't really know peanut butter well, but imagine there was Life that was no added sugars, all natural, just peanuts. I'm going to screw the pitch, whatever. But they were using peanuts from I'm going to absolutely just
go for it.
kill this. But where do peanuts come from?
I mean, multiple places.
Okay.
China, we had ours from Argentina.
Okay, cool. And they were like, you know what? I only want to use peanuts that are
homegrown
or single origin or pooped out the bum of a monkey.
Yeah.
That's great that you can then charge a premium, and maybe that's innovation because it's a different kind of peanut, but the consumers really care. And so for us, as we think about product development, and as your brand listening and hearing our journey, the way that we think about bringing a product to market is there real innovation there? Because I think it's really hard to get a buyer's attention if there isn't true innovation.
Oh my God, I am so excited. It feels like Hungary is finally swimming in the big leagues. I can't believe this. It's absolutely mental. But delighted to announce that Big Fish, yes, Big Fish, are partnering with the podcast. Perry's been on the podcast 3 times. Listeners absolutely love it. Some of our most downloaded and cherished episodes of all time. But Big Fish are behind literally so many brands in your cupboard, in your weekly shop. Charlie Bigham, Year Valley, Tyrrell's, Clipper Tea, Goo, Rana. I mean, mate, the list is longer than the River Nile. But they also share risk and invest in brands that they really believe are a force for good. They're brands that they believe are going to be the next big thing, like Howder, the snack that gives back. But even more exciting news, Big Fish want to speak to the next wave of small challenger food and drink brands that are destined for big things, the racconteurs, the movers, shakers, buccaneering visionaries. So look, if you want to speak to Big Fish and just have a chat, get your brand in front of them, then drop me a message. My mate Louis from Local Beer, Amazing Beer, was in their office, aka La Fish Bowl, last week, chatting to Perry, Freddie and the Big Fish crew. So drop me a message if you would like to speak to them. BoMe, our beloved sponsor, are helping build the fastest growing challenger food and drink brands. Look, if you're a small brand just starting out and need your first indie stockist, your first 100 stockists to wholesale, BoMe are the platform to categorically speed that up. But if you're a big brand wanting to get bigger, BoMe are also insane. They make field sales marble smooth, silky slick. They're just epic. Ollie's been on this podcast twice actually. They saw a 29% uplift in sales when using BoMe to check major malt listings availability. Insane. 29% uplift by downloading an app. Insane. Lucky Saint, my boy Aaron Duff, who's coming on this podcast in a couple of weeks. weeks, he uses it to manage a team of 30 people, and they've, like you said, have unlocked 500 draft listings by using BoMe. Look, you've got to get involved with this stuff. It's absolutely insane, and it will categorically change your life. It's just the sickest platform. I use it all the time at Islands. Give me another example of fake, you don't have to say the brand names, but fake innovation versus real innovation, because I think it's, I love doing this, you strike on gold. I think we've hit gold here.
Yeah.
But what, give me more on that.
Sure. A great example for us is when we first created the product, we were only using fruit juices not from concentrate. That was making the recipe so expensive that there was no way we would have been able to be in a Tesco meal deal. And what we quickly realized is, okay, we will have to compromise here, and we'll have to use fruit juices not from concentrate. But if our goal is to get healthy energy in the hands of as many people as possible, we need to be in a Tesco meal deal. If that's where 1 in every 8 pounds in UK retail goes through, we need to play in that retailer. And so if that means using fruit juices from concentrate, and it turns out, we did a consumer study, consumers didn't really know the difference, especially in a sparkling beverage. They almost expected it to come from concentrate. So you're actually paying more for an ingredient that no one cared about, over-engineering a product. So fake innovation can also be over-engineering. If Life decide that they are going to only use jars from the UK, great, but if it increases the price of the product by £1 and people aren't willing to pay that premium, you're actually hurting what your original mission was, which was to get great tasting, healthy peanut butter in the hands of as many people as possible.
Real innovation links to the overall mission, is what you're saying.
Overall mission, but also what consumers want.
Yeah.
Don't try and tell consumers what they want. Ask them, and if they don't want what you're trying to give them, don't try and force it down their throats.
Okay, so I agree with you, but I kind of will push back on that as well, because I think with you guys, which is such a good example, is everyone in the UK said matcha was too niche. I bet you got loads of that.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I think
a million people.
Yeah, a million people said
You may have said that too.
Yeah, I think I may have said that, yeah.
I actually think you did say that. Who did you say that to?
Too niche.
Yeah, I think you may have said that.
You said that.
Did I say that?
You said that to someone and it got back to me. Not in like a meme, but I was like, okay.
I may have written about it in my newsletter, I think. But I think as in it was. I said matcha was too niche.
But for us, and that's where the distinction is matcha is the input, the output or the benefit is not too niche. Energy is the number one functional benefit as to why people purchase food and beverage products.
This is what I'm saying. So I said it was too niche.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought it was too niche.
Yeah.
What you said there is, don't just create something and then give people what they want.
Right.
Right. You've got to. But then I think it's the whole thing of Henry Ford, of if people asked if if it wasn't a car, people would have asked for a half faster horse, right? Whereas I think with energy drinks is people, you have other brands who were creating other versions of energy drinks, but it wasn't matcha. People, until you guys came along, I don't think in an RTD people thought of matcha.
No.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I agree with that. And I think one thing to go back for a second is, even though we had to pivot and put matcha into a different format, the mission was always the same: to bring that jitter, crash-free, anxiety-free energy to the public by means of matcha.
It's about the framing. So if you think about an energy drink, it's just the Trojan horse for us delivering the benefit that matcha provides, which is longer lasting, jitter-free, crash-free energy. I think Rory Sutherland is probably, do you know Rory Sutherland?
Yeah. He's been on twice.
Oh, on this podcast?
Yeah.
He talks a lot about creating perceived value, and I think it's amazing. Everything from Uber Maps to creating putting a mirror in an elevator so people think that it's moving quicker than it really is, to Red Bull tasting like medicine because people perceive that medicinal taste to actually have an impact from an energy perspective. So for us, it's like, how do we package this product in a way that is digestible for people? And at the beginning, you're totally right. We were way too focused on the matcha messaging and people didn't get it. But as soon as you tell people it's like, oh, it's like a healthy energy drink, they're like, okay, great. And how's it healthy? Well, it uses matcha rather than synthetic caffeine, and it delivers on a different type of energy than what you've previously experienced.
Yeah, I think with brands, I was talking about this with Freya yesterday and with kombucha, and how I think what brands and categories can get so bogged down in the features that it takes someone a flight of imagination, this is very Rory Sutherland, to start pushing the benefits, right? What Trick did so well, I remember going to No back in the trade show, NOPE. CBD was ironically, that trade show was all green, it looked like medicinal, everyone was saying we've got grams of this, 25 grams of that. It looked like a chemistry lab, right? Trip came along. They stole the cues from other categories, repackaged it in terms of perceived value. They led with a benefit. Obviously, the name's Trip, but calm and everyday chaos. People are buying calm. They've packaged it as calm. I think what you guys have done is so interesting putting with this. It's like the matches were the features you were as you said, like so focused on that. When you changed it to we're energy, and then you bring this energy alive.
It's like a cheat code. And actually it's been such a journey. I don't want it to think like in the middle of the night I was like, oh, Eureka, like amazing, we should pivot. And actually someone had told us this right when we first started. They were like, why are you focusing on the input, focus on the output, focus on the output. You're an energy product, that's what people want. And I hold my hands up. I think that having matcha front and center was the reason we gained listings so quickly, because it was so clear to buyers what the innovation was. It was on the ingredient. And had we led with the healthy energy messaging initially, they would have been like, oh, well, it's just like a natural energy drink. No. But having said that, putting matcha front and center made the education piece with consumers that much more difficult. So now that we've gained retail listings, we very much are focusing on the energy messaging rather than the input messaging of matcha.
And is it okay to drop a little bomb? Give your listeners some inside information. We are actually going to be kind of redesigning our can and launching a refined version in hopefully around Feb.
Amazing.
And it'll look very much like this can. It'll just have somewhat of a different messaging hierarchy.
As in different can or different packaging,
Different
like brand.
slightly different messaging.
Slightly different messaging, and we're switching to a printed can, and we're no longer going to be leading with the matcha message. Whilst matcha will still maintain a fixture on the front of pack, we will be pushing harder on the healthy energy messaging.
When people are, when you're in sort of like a Whole Foods or a Planet Organic, it's a very different type of consumer than those that shop meal deal drinks. So Planet Organic customers will pick up a product, they'll look at the ingredients, they'll try to understand the benefits, they'll try to understand why you created that product. In a meal deal situation, it's a split-second decision. And most people will already be reaching for that Diet Coke. So unless you scream another reason as to why they should pick your product over a Diet Coke, you're not going to win that customer over.
Let's talk about the meal deal, and let's talk about the hardest geezer activation or partnership. Because I thought that was such a clever way to drive rate of sale or drive shoppers. Kit Kat duck hoisting thing. Yeah. So clever.
Can we plug that quickly?
Yeah. Go for it.
So what Dan's mentioning is the hardest geezer meal deal. If you don't know the hardest geezer, look him up. He's the ginger guy running the length of Africa.
I don't know if you're allowed to say ginger.
Am I?
Redhead,
sorry.
Auburn.
Shawnee is a redhead, and she said it was okay, so I apologize. But we are running a competition whereby if you take crazy photos of your meal deal or do something wild, like run a marathon and every mile eat an entire meal deal, which someone has done. Someone actually even brought one to Everest Base Camp, which is wild. And post it on socials, you will enter a competition which will potentially give you access to come to Tunisia to see Russ cross the finish line. So, and you can have the opportunity to run with him. So the meal deal is a duck hoisin wrap, a Kit Kat chunky, and a PerfectTed.
So the idea behind the Hardest Geezer partnership is our customer base is 65-70% female, which is great because when we talk to retailers, we're bringing a new type of customer into the energy category, which is a very male-dominated category. But with Hardest Geezer specifically, it's an opportunity to access a more male demographic, but also we've been very much focused on the early days around messaging to working professionals around productivity and focus. And what Hardest Geezer allows us to do is tap into more of a fitness demographic. And if the man running the entire length of Africa is using our product to fuel him and is getting his personal best drinking our product, then I think it's great social proof that you should also be picking it up too.
Yeah, and it's perfect in this context for like ultra marathon runners. If you're doing something that requires energy for an extended period of time, this is the perfect drink because matcha offers longer lasting energy than a typical energy drink or coffee.
If you're a challenger brand and you look at the likes of Red Bull and Monster and the type of sports or athletes they're sponsoring, we just don't have the budget. And so, but what we can do is get super creative. And so part of our partnership strategy is to back underdogs and to back people that are change makers and doing really cool things, but aren't necessarily front and center of the news. So for example, we work with a Rubik's Cube world champion, and it's a great way of showing the cognitive benefits of the product. We work with Hardest Geezer, showing the energy benefits of the product. So it's about getting creative with our marketing specifically.
So is the Kit Kat the hoisin his favourite meal deal?
Yeah.
I was wondering about that's
Yeah.
quite a rogue meal deal. I was like,
Yeah.
And Teddy brought one all the way to Angola when he went out there.
Oh, that's amazing. So how are you tracking? Because I always find how do you drive the rate of sale? It's the panacea.
It's the $1 million question.
It's the $1 million question. And how are you tracking that? How are you being able to know how that's moving the needle? Do you know what I mean?
Well, shout out to North Star, which is basically a great service for challenger brands that can get access to data that was previously too expensive. So we invest in data so we can see on a weekly basis how our Tesco sales are tracking, but also Tesco provide that for you. And we can also see how we're tracking against competitors. And what's really interesting, the data that we want to see is how has that impacted sales of Hoisin Duck Wrap and Kit Kat Chunkies, because we've, the inbound that we get from people sending in their photos of picking up the Hardest Geezer meal deal is frightening.
Yeah, it's so creative as well.
And I also think for challenger brands as well, and we were speaking, you walked in on us having a meeting with Holland and Barrett, is what is the value that you can bring to the retailer beyond rate of sale? And I think what we've done super well is build a platform that allows us to be ambassadors for different retailers for different things. So for example, Tesco is really championing innovation, and we're super grateful to have such an amazing partner in them and to be able to provide a platform for showcasing the innovation that they're supporting, specifically within energy. Holland and Barrett as well have been, they were the first retailer to take the brand, and so we feel a lot of loyalty to them in showcasing how amazing they've been for supporting us and other challenger brands. And they maybe haven't had the best reputation in the past, but I can promise you they have invested a ton into our brand, and the people there are amazing to work with. So
that's fascinating as well, is how you, again, when you get so many listings so quick, is how you spread the unique love by customer, and how you target. I need to introduce you to this guy. He actually lived in America, who I interviewed the other week, and he does a lot of work with a brand called Fern and Rosie, which is she's amazing. And he was talking about, specifically in America, actually, he lived in 34 states.
Wow.
And how the retailer, he was working for Unilever.
Okay.
And how the each retailer has a different agenda, a different type of consumer. And it's like how your brand needs to rock up to that retailer and as you said, do the stuff beyond rate of sale, which I love. And the analogy we were basically saying is, it's like you don't change who you are. It's a bit like if your grandma asks you how your trip was to Ibiza, right? The way you talk about that trip to your grandma versus your co-workers versus your mates at the pub versus your girlfriends, 5 different responses, but you're still the same person. And as a brand, you may have 5 different retailers, but they each get unique things.
They each want different things as well. I think it's got to be genuine. A great example is shout out Fifi. I won't say her last name so you guys don't inbound her, but I'll just say it. She works at Matthew Clark, which is a distributor, mostly does like wine, spirits.
Yeah.
And she's awesome. I reached out to her for advice because food service isn't something we've done particularly well, and I think there's a great opportunity there for us. And I got on a call with her and I was just asking her advice, and she's the buyer there. And we got to the end of the call and she was like, anything else? I was like, nope, that's it. Thank you so much. Anyway, call ended. We then met up again when she was in London. We've developed a friendship since. And when we were last together, she said, can I tell you something? And I said, sure. What? She said, I really thought you were shit at your job. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you're kind of the sales function of PerfectTed. I said, yeah. She said, you never asked me for a listing. I said, but we weren't ready for a listing. Like we didn't have accounts lined up. I couldn't really bring much to the table from that front. I just wanted your advice. She goes, I walked away from that meeting thinking you just weren't good at your job because you hadn't asked to send me samples. You hadn't asked for a listing. You hadn't asked for introductions. But I actually think there's a lot of value in building relationships and not asking for something. If you take a celebrity, for example, they probably spend their whole life being surrounded by people that want something from them. And buyers are the same thing. They are constantly getting inbounded by brands that want listings, existing brands that want more distribution, their managers that want them to perform better from like a a P&L perspective. And so there's a lot of value in just having honest conversations and not asking for anything. That is, I think, a very powerful sentiment.
Yeah, I think the less... Yeah, again, it's kind of like the opposite of a good idea is a good idea. Rory Sutherland, he always talks about that. Do the opposite. When everyone's asking the buyer for more distribution, here's my JVP, can I have 20 minutes? It's like, just ask for advice. I think Amelia at Bold Bean did that really well. She asked Waitrose for advice before she was even ready to launch, and then went back to the how you spread the PerfectTed energy or love, whatever you want to kind of define it as, versus different retailers. So and we can pick a retailer as an example, but how do you get the ideas in this office, and then okay, this is how the retailers, we're going to show the love to this retailer or spread the energy with this retailer. How do you actually bring that from manifestation into execution? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the steps?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Firstly, to go back a second, just about splitting the love between retailers, and I think that this could be potentially helpful for anyone who's pitching a retailer. I think it's so important to look at any kind of public information available about that retailer and what their annual plans are before going into a meeting with them. So understand what their objectives are, right? If, for instance, Holland and Barrett is putting focus on this food transformation, think about how your product could potentially add to that range and how you can be bringing them value, and you can be bringing incremental sales, and you could be bringing them a new customer. So think about that perspective. And I think that's what we try to do in showing buyers that we're actually not cannibalizing sales of Red Bull. We're bringing in a totally new customer who's never previously shopped energy, or tea actually as well.
Do you know what I find so disappointing is when we'll interview a potential candidate for a role, and they'll be like, I'll ask them, why do you like the brand? And they're like, X, Y, Z, and I actually can't wait to try the product. And I'm like, can't wait to try the product. We're on most high streets in the UK. Like, you could have made the effort to try the product. That's the same way I think about buyers. When I go into a meeting, I know everything about that buyer. I know if it's public, I know what music they like. I know what posts they've posted. I know what interests they have.
We know what their mom was doing 2 years ago on this exact date.
And not in a creepy way, but I think there's a level of respect. And if you don't do your diligence, like, how can you know how to support a retailer without knowing what their plans or goals are? And so whenever we go into a meeting, before we give the pitch and sit down and show our deck, which we often don't even show decks, is we ask them, so what are your plans for the category? What are you trying to work on? Where are areas that you maybe have an opportunity? And then, you know what? There are actually times where we're like, and this happened with Fifi and Matthew Clark, I don't think we can support, right now. But that conversation may open up down the line. So I think it's about being honest. And if you just try and sell the same thing to the same person, try and sell the same thing in the same way to different people, it won't land.
Have you heard of infinite versus finite games?
No.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Super interesting. It's basically like finite games is like a game of soccer, right? You play it for one person to win and one person to lose.
Yeah.
Whereas infinite games, the game is just to keep playing. So you're writing 5 days a week. That's an infinite game. It's like, it could... One post may do well, one may do not so well. You're playing the infinite game.
Shit one today.
You just keep showing up, and you can apply that with buyers as well. And that was a big reframe for me. Is it's like, instead of it's constantly sending like, can we have a meeting? Can we think? We just used to send little newsletters, very personalised to a buyer. No ask. You're playing the long game. You're playing, instead of how can I get this listing in 2 years, what does this relationship look like in 20 years is a much different conversation. I think that it's just fascinating seeing how you guys have kind of played with that. I want to talk about Steven Bartlett.
Sure. Can I mention one last thing on the point about rate of sale? I think another kind of tactic that we try to employ is engaging store staff. And obviously that's easier said than done when you're in 1,200 Tesco stores alone. But if it means going into a store and maybe you come with product or you buy a can and you gift it to one of the store staff and you explain a little bit about the brand, that person will be so grateful that you thought about them, and they'll probably go out of their way if a customer approaches them and asks for some recommendation to suggest your brand. And so I think that it's such a small thing, but it's so overlooked by brands sometimes because they think it's impossible to do on like a macro level, but even doing it on a micro level is so effective. And then you'll see the gains in that store because then they'll be suggesting it and maybe they'll give you a few more placements. And
Well, also, I read a post by the guy who did G-Bell today. You know G-Bell?
Yeah.
And he said, walk the floor, which is a quote by Sam Walton, who's the Walmart guy, founder. And I think Jesse's post was all about how they'd been in this store in Tesco's, but the rate of sale was 0 because basically the stock was in the store, but it's out the back.
Yeah.
And I think you can never underlook if you're not on shelf.
Oh yeah, of course.
Your rate of sales is getting pillaged.
Yeah.
I think the Waitrose CEO said it's like availability is like scoring an own goal. I think it's the best way of tracking it. So yeah, let's go on to Steven Bartlett. Obviously off the back of Dragon's Den. He's a super. I mean, his podcast and his learning. He's got a whole ocean of wild learnings. What are some of the principles he's taught you that you didn't expect to learn from him?
That's a good question. I think there are some things from a marketing perspective that he's taught us in the sense of we record everything. So right now we have a full-time videographer that comes to every single meeting. Camera's on right now. And part of that is because we're moving into the age of entrepreneurship in the sense of entertainment. It's the reason why shows like Selling Sunset on Netflix, if you've seen them, or Buying Beverly, I'm obsessed with them. I love them. People love reality TV. And I think we're almost moving away from Love Island style things into value add content like sort of showcasing the entertainment around entrepreneurship, things that people can really learn from. And so the one thing that he's taught us, I think, has been super valuable is as a brand in terms of content and marketing, think about what the value is that you're bringing to your community. Because it's really hard to, when I was first posting on LinkedIn, I was posting about a new listing we got or things that were relatable but weren't necessarily driving value. And now my strategy on LinkedIn very much is about if the post is shouty about us or comes across or doesn't add value to our community in any way, then I won't put it out there.
On that point as well, when it comes to content, one thing that I really have taken away from Steven is bring people into an experience or a place that they cannot access themselves. And so whether that's bringing someone into a meeting with Steven, like he actually posted on his vlog and we've shared that clip on LinkedIn. Most people wouldn't be able to get into the room with Steven to have a business meeting. And so filming that and bringing the audience there is such a unique experience that most other people would never have. And it's another reason why shows like Selling Sunset do so well is because they bring people into, $20 million homes that they probably would never go into if they weren't on this show. And so it's about bringing them places you cannot yourself access.
Yeah, that's mad. Yeah, I kind of just wish I'd recorded more of the podcast behind the scenes now, because some of the places I've been to have rogue as fuck. Do you know what I mean? That's.
We'll also have moments where, for example, when I was crying the other day, I could feel myself getting really emotional, and I said, "Marrissa, get Mark." And so Mark, our videographer, came down and he recorded me crying, and Marrissa was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And it's really hard because you've got a camera in your face. But if we just glamorize the process, then we're not adding value to our community. And that's why every single podcast or speaking engagement we will do, we will make a point of saying that it is no illusion how hard this is, both emotionally, but also the amount of time and effort that we put in and the sacrifice.
Another lesson that I've really taken away from Steven, and while this might feel intuitive, it really wasn't landing with me until he said it for whatever reason, is just consistency. Like if you do something enough times consistently, you will absolutely see a benefit someday. Like he said, he was like, I remember starting the podcast and I was like, recording it under my comforter in my bedroom, and I posted it. It was shit. All my friends made fun of me, but I kept doing it every single week, and it took years to building it up. And eventually it's paid off. And so that's the same mentality that we've applied to writing on LinkedIn. And I think eventually, if you do enough reps, you'll build that muscle and it'll be strong enough to really take you to places that you probably thought you couldn't get to.
Yeah, I think Chris Williamson has the consistency compounds, which is something I really love. What else down that kind of path? I always feel like when I meet people, you pick up stuff from osmosis, like not directly. So when I walked in here today, like speaking to Rom for an hour, I got a vibe of like how this company operates through kind of obviously speaking to her, but just osmosis.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? What would you say you've learned from hanging out with the Diary of a CEO team, and Steven, like through osmosis, like not like a tangible he said this, do you know what I mean?
They're like machines. I mean, in the best possible way. They work their butts off, and and it's so motivating to see because they all care so deeply about the work that they're doing and take it very seriously, and they absolutely put in the work to see those gains, and they consistently do it over and over and over again. And I think that to me is so motivating and something that I personally take a lot away from, but also try to instill that kind of work ethic in the team. I mean, I don't need to, they already come with it. But really that hard work mentality and graft.
And just off of that, like this again, potential to sound arrogant and controversial. And I'd love for anyone else who thinks they top this to comment or let us know or drop us an email or let you know, and you can let me know. I think we are the hungriest team. And again, ironic, hungry podcast.
Yeah.
We are the hungriest team in food and bev. And I don't mean hungry in terms of growth and top line. Hunger in terms of growth from like a personal level. If you look at our team, every single person, and you can see my eyes, I mean, every single person in our team wants to be the best in the world. Not the best in the UK, not the best in food and beverage, the best in the world at whatever they do. Mark, our videographer, wants to be the best in the world at creating content that goes viral. Shani, our head of sales, wants to be the best in the world at driving rate of sale in a retail environment.
Rami wants to be the best marketeer.
We genuinely want to be the best in the world, and if you don't, like PerfectTed isn't the right place for you. And that is potentially a lot of pressure, but I think the potential reward or ambition or upside is huge. And if PerfectTed doesn't work, then that just falls on us.
How do you hire and find that hunger?
It's not, and this is just personal experience, and sorry for any agency people who are listening, it's not through recruiters, it's not through LinkedIn ads, it's through people that reach out to us. If you build it, they will come. Every single hire we've had has been people that have come to us, and actually a lot of the people that we have in our team today turned down the job when we first offered it.
Yes, talk to me about that, because it's a reciprocal thing, right? So hiring's a reciprocal thing, because as much as you're looking for hungry people, again, using the pun's going to go quite far here, but like you need to, as founders, demonstrate hunger, because I think, was it 3 of the team, is what I'd heard from having the chat with Ron, said no. What?
I'll tell you why each of them said no.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. This is super interesting.
Shani, our head of sales, said no because she was new to another company and wanted to see that out, which is amazing in terms of loyalty. And she also said no because she thought the financial burden of her salary in the company could be potentially debilitating if we didn't continue to grow, which again is an incredibly empathetic reason.
She just had so much integrity as well throughout the process, and you could really see her values, and it actually made us want to work with her even more.
Amazing. Yeah.
But in that process, I adopted the mentality of it'll work out one day. I just know it will. It'll work out. And I said that to her, and fast forward a few months and she was on the team.
James, our operations manager, said no because he felt like the opportunity was a little bit too risky, which is true. Early stage food and beverage is a ruthless game and incredibly competitive. And if you're not well funded, it can be a short game too. So that's why he initially turned it down. But yeah.
And then Mark said no because I think his work was more aligned with longer format videography, documentary style videos, and he, as part of the job, would also be doing more like short form social media clips for Reels and TikToks and whatever. And I think when it was positioned more as a social media role, he was less interested. And then he reneged and was like, I want a challenge and I want to learn a new skill set. And I think this would be good for me. And so I think that curiosity, that hunger, the desire to continually challenge oneself and improve is something that we all have. And if you don't have it, you're not on the PerfectTed team.
How do you feed that team's hunger and make sure your team's hunger and make sure it stays insatiable?
It comes from the top. Like it comes from the top. I think part of it is the example that you show. First in the office, last to leave kind of thing. I got a lot of this from my last experience working at Bain & Company, which was I was inspired by leaders that made me want to think that I wanted to be like them one day.
Yeah.
And it's almost like parenting, right? There are so many kids that say, I want to grow up and be like my mom or my dad or my older sibling. And we want our team to feel like that. And the way that we can get them to feel like that is by inspiring them through acting and leading.
Like for instance, so when we first started the business, it was just us, right? Full time. And this basically forced me to learn all Adobe apps, Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Illustrator. I essentially had to become an expert in something I had absolutely zero experience in previously. And then I had to pick up videography and photography and video editing. And I think by teaching both like ourselves the skills that we would then have to hire for has actually shown the team that it's possible for them to learn anything because we taught ourselves, and they're hungry to learn and be better than we are, right? So I think that is also a really great goal for them.
Have you had any, we don't go like name names or specific examples, but I think culture is strengthened through like weakness. And so like if you have employees or who are slightly dodgy or it doesn't work, it's not the right cultural fit, your culture gets stronger off the back of it. It's like anti-fragility. You need to be fragile, but you become anti-fragile. Have you had any examples where you've hired someone and haven't been that hungry, or they haven't got that hunger? Like, how have you navigated that? Because I think you're building a rocket ship. What I'm picking up from you is like, as you so rightly said, Teddie, it's like PerfectTed may not be the right place for you. That's sweet. But I'd love to just understand that.
I think the times when we've had challenges from a cultural perspective have actually been myself and Marissa's fault. So a good example is a couple of weeks ago, I was kind of feeling that I hadn't been on top of my game. And I felt like that was...
when you say on top of your game, like...
I just wasn't feeling it. I don't know. The magic wasn't there. I think it's really hard when you've been at the game for 2 years to be every single day at the races. And there was probably a week period where I wasn't at the races. And you can see that seep into everyone else's work. You can see the way that people conduct themselves. The music upstairs gets a little bit louder. People start acting in certain ways, or you see some people taking out the trash and others not. And there's almost like this dangerous complacency. And I think complacency for a challenger brand is the most, as a founder, it's incredibly terrifying. And I think for a brand, it's really, really, really dangerous. And so we sat the team down and we said, we're missing that hunger, we're missing that fire. And we had to take accountability because part of it had come from us. But complacency, from a cultural perspective, we've never had someone who has been toxic. But I think we have had complacency. And ultimately, we've got to hold our hands up and say that came from us.
Yeah, because we would condone that. And it can't be condoned. And we would maybe set that poor example.
Yeah, I'm thinking of for some reason my brain's going to Gordon Ramsay. Right?
Yeah.
So Gordon Ramsay talks about 1 star, 2 star, 3 star Michelin, right? And what's the difference between the 1 star, which is amazing to achieve, the 2 star, the 3 star, and Gordon's got Royal Hospital Road that's had a 3 star in Chelsea for like 3 years. And he basically just says is the consistency and no complacency. He goes, we are the thing that you said, complacency is terrifying. I love that. It's delicious. It's so true. And if complacency slips in, it nefariously spreads like cancer through the organisation. It's quite an intense way of saying it, but it's true. What Gordon also says is he gets asked the question, like, what's the difference between a 1-star kitchen and a 3-star? Because ultimately, like, it's just tiny things. And he goes, when you go to a 3-star, the chef is able to find gear that other people didn't even know existed, and they didn't know existed. With what has been that gear for you? Then maybe that's come from Steven, maybe that's come from hanging out with the hardest geezer. What is that extra gear you've had to find?
No, I think it's come from...
Or where's it come from?
Yeah, I think it's come from, for me at least, my parents.
Interesting.
And it is... The gear, I think, is a relentless consistency. Like, again, hopefully you can feel it through this podcast. Marrissa and I, we don't stop. Like, we are machines in a sense. And it's something that I'm proud of, but I also think there is something particularly dangerous there as well from a team culture environment is I don't take lunch breaks. And that's terrible. And I think it can hurt creativity in many ways. And it can probably be the reason as to why I feel pressure or stress in certain situations. And I don't want to set the example for the team that you should eat at your desk. That's just how I operate. You know, I de-stress in the morning, I de-stress at night, but I decide that I don't like to take lunch break. And so...
One thing that we've implemented, though, to counteract that is we have planned lunches every Friday as a team where we sit down and we just chat, and we don't even talk about work. We kind of just chat about life, how we're feeling, you know, something fun that happened this week, what people are up to with their friends and family. And I think by kind of ensuring that we have that scheduled fun, we're able to balance our hardworking approach as well. And like the kind of, you know, maybe poor example that we set with the working through lunch, because I also work through lunch. It's just hard for me to take a break because when I'm zoned in, it's hard for me to get back out and then come back in.
What does your day look like? So what time are you guys in?
Yeah.
What time are you guys out?
Yeah.
Do you work weekends?
Yeah.
What's the crack?
So
the honest crack as well.
Yeah, the honest crack. The honest crack is that I am a night owl and Teddie is a morning person. And at first, this did not sit well with him because he would get to work at 8 and I would maybe rock up at 9:15. And he would be like, what goes? But the difference is that I work late every single night. Every single night I work until essentially I go to sleep. And whether that's on my phone, whether I'm writing down ideas, whether I'm just like shooting the shit with Levi and just like ideating in that way, I get my best ideas at night. And for whatever reason, it works for me and it doesn't work for Teddie. So we had a lot of tension at first around that because, and I remember Teddie would actually be like, we would be on our way to meet someone and he'd be like, I bet they're a morning person. Almost as though it was like a sign of that they were getting it right. But I think what we've realized is like everyone has different working styles, and especially people who have neurodivergent conditions, and that's okay. And that should be celebrated. And we need to ensure that we're creating a workspace that is open and accepting to those types of people. So for instance, we had our head of e-commerce join the team, Nicole. And when she came in, she was like, she didn't ask. She just told us, she's like, hey, I'm going to go take a walk in Regent's Park. And I know that sounds normal, but for us, no one had ever really done that before. And we were like, yeah, you go take a walk in Regent's Park. That's great. And now the team partakes in that walk with her, which is so nice. And it's such a welcome break for them to like refresh and get new ideas. And so I think just by creating an open space that is accepting to people's needs and ensuring that we're building in time to allow people to rest and recoup, we're getting to the most productive that we can be as a team together.
There's no doubt that my working style is unhealthy.
What's yours like, mate? What's your...
It's unhealthy. It's
That's in like literally specifically is what time you in, like what time you start, what time do you...
In about 8:15, 8:30. Leave really depends, but I forget to. When I'm stressed, I don't eat. Some people eat. When I'm stressed, I don't eat.
Teddie will go days without eating.
It's I sound like I'm on a hunger strike.
So no, but it's just mad because I think there's an element where you need to be a Terminator and just crunch through things, but then make no bones about it. Down that road on that journey, there's a risk of burnout. Hi guys, super quick one. So excited. Look, for years I've been badgered on about Hungry the podcast. You're probably bored to death. Thanks for putting up with me. But Hungry is also an agency, and we look after one amazing brand called Islands Chocolate. We've had a great time over the year. We've won listings at a load of wholesalers. We've won Milk and More. We've got our first grocery listing coming very soon, which is very sick. But what I'm thrilled to announce is Hungry is merging with HC Consulting. My boy Harry Clark and his wonderful team, he's an absolute G. They do brand strategy, new business and account management. But why I really love working with Harry and why we've got on so well over the last couple of months is Harry was actually the founder of the boozy isolate brand Pops. So he's been in the trenches, he's grafted his face off, he's had the sleepless nights, he's had the turmoil, he's had the triumph, he knows what it is to be a founder, he is a founder. And he's got a proven track record in grocery and out of home. Holy moly dips, the gut stuff, Savile drinks, Remio gelato. So if you're a brand and you're stuck, you're looking for like new business help, you're looking to scale, drop us a message, we'd love to chat. Thank you so much. Back to the old episode.
Do you know what it is? It's that when we first started, I'm a very emotional person. When we first started, that emotion is really bad, I think. Well, not bad. I think it makes it harder to be an early stage founder because when you have wins, you get overexcited, but when you have downs, you take them really badly. And so for me, I've developed over the past 2 years, and it's something that I actually am not happy with, and I think it affects my personal relationships, dating, my family relationships, is I've become a bit numb emotionally, and there are going to be people that are listening that are going to be diagnosing me with some sort of problem, and I'm a very happy person, like right now, but I am definitely a little numb, whether that's because I meditate and I feel like I'm a little bit more grounded, but I don't get super excited when we get a purchase order, or I don't get as excited. I do get excited. I don't get as excited when we get a purchase order as I did previously, but I also don't get as sad when we have a manufacturing issue, because to me it's part of the journey.
But is that not experience as well? I know like numb's part of it, because I think with experience is like the ups are less frequently, the downs are less intense. Do you know what I mean? But the numb bit's interesting.
The numb bit I think is, we got one of the, it's not announced yet, but one of the bigger listings we've ever received, news last week. I don't think I even smiled, and that was honestly what caused me, part of the reason that caused me to cry is like, what the hell am I doing all of this for if we get that news and it doesn't make me happy? And
that's mad.
Yeah. And part of it was because there was this challenge that was nagging, and everything else could be going super well, but as a founder, if there is a problem in your business that you need to solve, it's almost like, well, at least for me, I sometimes forget about the good stuff that's going on. And I risk people coming away from this podcast thinking I'm a super dark, depressed guy. I'm not. It's just, that's the reality.
But I think every founder, and that's why I was speaking to founders, there's multitudes of textures to a human being. It's more, not necessarily more so in founders, that's a stupid thing to say, but teasing it out in the conversations. And what's mad is seeing, this, when I walked in, and I've seen it on socials, positive energy, super energy. What you're showing me, which is great to see, is the discipline that facilitates that energy.
100%.
And discipline is not... discipline is a harder thing than motivation, because if people think, PerfectTed, the founder's probably just buzzing their tits off all the time, they're super happy, it's like, no, there's a lot of discipline that builds this culture that facilitates the fun. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think just on Teddie's point about being numb, this may seem a bit tangential, but I think this is one of the reasons why having a co-founder is so important, because Teddie might be numb and this might impact his ability to have empathy in certain situations for certain employees. But you have me, on the other hand, who can then kind of, I guess, adhere to that side that Teddie maybe can't do. And it's the same with me. Like, if I'll give you an example. I cried today. I cried earlier this morning because of some news that we got, and it kind of rocked me. And Teddie, in that moment, he was like, "It's fine. It's fine."
It's also not a big deal.
And
was that in front of the team?
No.
It was not. No.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
My eyes. Yeah, go on.
And in that moment, his numbness actually was a massive benefit for me because it helped ground me. And I think that's why when I hear a lot of solo founders and they talk about how hard it is, I can absolutely imagine why it's so hard, because you don't have that person to counterbalance you. And so we balance one another in really great ways. And I'm super grateful, because I don't think I'd be able to do this emotionally if it weren't for Teddie.
Any founder that comes on here and is like, it's been easy and this is what we did and this is the strategy we pursued. Mate, honestly, there are days now when I come into the office and I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? You know, like...
And how do you... I want to talk about a post I think you wrote, mate, because I think this is the perfect time to bring this in. Let me try and find this. You were talking about vulnerability cultures equals creative cultures. So that's what I took, and it's. I used to tell you this. I used to think that strong leadership meant you always had to put on a brave face, but Brené Brown, might have copied and pasted this wrong.
Yeah.
Work on courage and innovation dispels that myth. Her work on courage and innovation dispels that myth. She argues vulnerability is actually essential to innovation. I was like, wow. Since innovation by definition is idea, iteration, failure, iteration, failure, iteration. And some companies that inspire high tolerance for vulnerability and courage will be the most innovative. Vulnerability is not weakness, and leaders who promote cultures that suggest otherwise will reduce their team's willingness to take leaps of faith that are critical to innovation. I was like, fucking hell, that's amazing. But how do you... There's something in that, right, to set the scene for this part of the conversation, in that you need to show a degree of vulnerability to make it feel like, guys, I want you to try something, and if it fails, it's sweet. But then equally, you're the positive, perfect Teddie. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, how do you navigate that paradox? Do you know what I mean?
I think it can be the numbness I was talking about before. I think you can be vulnerable but professional. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think when people think about vulnerability, they're like, oh my God, are you crying in the office in front of your team? I think there are probably certain situations, like my dog died this week, where it probably would have been appropriate to cry in the office. And there are situations where, you know what, if there is a business challenge that is particularly frustrating, and I should probably go and take a walk, because me crying in the office is not helpful to the team's morale and not helpful to other people working and focusing on their own role. When I think about vulnerability and its impact on innovation, if you're not willing to fail, you're not willing then to try new things that are potentially risky. Ultimately, starting a business is inherently risky in itself. So you are being vulnerable if you've made that decision to start a business. There are so many people that start a business on the side because they're not. Yes, they may frame it as they're not willing to take that risk, or they can't take that risk. But I think a lot of it is ego and an unwillingness to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is putting yourself out there, and regardless of whether it works out or not, you being totally okay with that outcome. And as we think about launching new products, for example, we put samples in front of Holland and Barrett today, but I was like, you know what, the taste isn't there. And I knew the taste wasn't there. So I asked him, okay, well, how can we improve on the taste? And we got great feedback. You know what, we'll go and implement that. That wasn't failure. That wasn't the buyer turning around and be like, the product's shit. My favorite quote is one that my dad reminds me, and I try and come back to it whenever I'm stressed or anxious, is fear knocked, faith opened, and no one was there. I'll repeat that. Fear knocked, faith opened, and no one was there. There are so many situations that we end up killing ourselves with anxiety, and truthfully, no risk or no anxiety ever materializes.
I also think that by creating a professionally vulnerable culture, you don't have to have a face on in the office if you work here. I think it might be different for us because obviously we want to maintain this level of forward movement and, again, professionalism. But I think that by allowing the team to feel that they can be vulnerable, you're actually creating the headspace for more creativity, because when you're experiencing negative emotions, and negative emotions might be feelings of self-consciousness or feelings of hiding something, then you can't actually experience the full range of positive emotion, and thus allowing your mind to expand. And so for us, it's so integral to continually be creative and innovate that we're all experiencing positive emotion.
But also the vulnerability takes I think in so many cultures, people are afraid to ask dumb questions because of ego. One, I think scared of getting berated by bosses for crap ideas. Two, what vulnerability, and I love the word what you said there, Marissa, professional vulnerability, because professional's a big caveat. But what that allows us to do is it takes the kind of the edges off.
Yeah.
And when the edges are off, it gives you the permission to fail. Yeah. There's a quote by we're putting a lot of quotes out today. The PerfectTed must be working. But Ernest Hemingway, obviously one of the best writers of all time, his quote that loads of comedians in the States have on their laptop: the first draft of everything is shit.
Yeah. And
it basically what it means is that's okay. That gives you the permission for the first draft to be shit. You're going to make it better. The third draft, and I something I adhere to massively. And this is what you're doing with the match with Holland and Barrett today. I'm not saying it was shit, but it's like it gives you the permission to take something to Holland and Barrett, which may not be perfect, but get feedback.
For sure.
Whereas I think if you say the first draft is perfect, that meeting with Holland and Barrett doesn't happen today. Do you know what I mean? And it's just fascinating just getting into
And when that product launches, they will feel like they had developed it with us, and they had.
Yeah.
There was a guy called Morgan Housel who wrote The Psychology of Money, I think is the book. He had a quote, or he went down a line of thinking that I thought was particularly interesting, and I think it relates to founders, is he said, the best state in the world, or the best position you can be in as a person, is to be unknown and rich. Because there's no expectation, there's no social debt, is what he calls.
Interesting.
And you've got all the benefits of having wealth. Whether you define that in terms of having a happy family or monetary, it doesn't matter. The worst situation to be in is to be famous and poor. And that's because you have this expectation that you need to lead a life in a certain way or a certain fashion or to a certain level, whether that's going to nice restaurants, wearing nice clothes, having a nice car, but you don't have the money to be able to afford it. So there's such a disparity between the expectation of the life that you should live and the life that you can actually live. And I think founder-led brands run that risk. And we've had that risk is, when you're bootstrapping a business and I'm eating Tesco meal deals every day, everyone's like, oh my God, listing after listing after listing. What they don't see is a company that is, every single month just like scathing past payroll in terms of just fighting for survival. And now, fortunately, we're in a position where we don't have to do that. But I think what sort of induced a lot of pressure at the beginning was being definitely not famous, but after Dragon's Den, being at least known. I mean, in the street today, someone came up to me and said, hey, you're PerfectTed, which is great and super nice. But when you're having a shit day, you almost just want to be unknown, right? So it's...
How do you... And I was speaking to Ron upstairs about this, and it's fascinating, is how to balance the funness, and this is, I'm talking about on social now, as in like you've done some hilarious things, both all you guys have so jokes, right? With and Ron was saying, but moving the pendulum slightly more to this is macho, this is the value of it, that piece. And I think I interviewed the founder of Who Gives a Crap, and he was saying, the toilet paper, and he was saying something so interesting. He goes, too much purpose makes a brand boring. 100%. And it's like, then he gave the analogy of a dinner party. You've got a dinner party and there's a person who just talks about the environment. As much as it's great, you can't do a full evening. And he was basically saying, we've discussed this a lot about texture in humans, texture in brands. And he was saying with Who Gives a Crap, it's like we give away 40% of our profits to build toilets around the world, but we're called Who Gives a Crap. And I think it's interesting, how do you move the pendulum from fun to serious brand? Like how are you navigating that piece?
The way that we kind of think about our brand is that it's like a human, and humans are nuanced and they have many different components to them. And so we have different pillars, and especially when it comes to our content, these pillars are education, they are kind of customer related, so making the customer the hero. They are entertainment and fun. And I think we have led with a lot of entertainment and fun content. And that for us has worked. It's not a bad approach, because I think in this day and age, we live in an attention economy. And so if you're not producing a piece of content that is a thumb stopper, that is provocative enough to get someone's attention when there's a million other stimuli trying to distract them, then you're not doing it right. So if you're just posting a product image on your feed, the customer can go into the store to see that if they really want to. Bring them something new, bring them something different that they can interact with. And I think, you know, now we're kind of leaning more towards this education piece where we really want it to be abundantly clear what people can get from the product. And we're a functional product and we're a purpose-led brand. You know, our mission is to bring positive energy to people everywhere. And the way that we kind of define positive energy is in the interactions that we have with people, in the type of content that we put out, but also in the type of caffeine that we are physically giving people and that they are ingesting. And so we want to make sure that people understand what that is. And there's a way of doing it that's fun and engaging. And as long as we can ensure that we continue keeping it, you know, entertaining and fun, even if it is a more serious topic, then we're doing our job right.
It's been a journey though, because finding that balance hasn't been easy. As an example, I said to Marrissa probably 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I don't want any content with my top off. I don't know why. There would just happen to be some content ideas that came up that where I was shirtless, and I was just like, I don't feel comfortable with that. And that's something we worked on. Another example, I've never spoken about this. Sorry, go on.
Sorry. No, you were about to say.
Well, I've never spoken about this before, but I was actually cast for Gordon Ramsay's Future Food Stars, and I went to the first day of filming, and I won't say who, but the producer sat me down and said, in every reality TV show, or in every show, there's different character types. There's the friend, there's the person who's slightly aggressive, there's the blah, blah, blah. And they said, you know what you are? You're the flirt. And I said, fuck that. I'm not the flirt. You know, I'm coming onto this show to showcase the business. This is a business competition. I'm not the flirt. And the thing that pisses me off is when people put me into a box based on either the content that we've put out or the way that they've interacted with me and the perception they've created from that interaction. And so my point is, it's been a journey to figure out what I'm comfortable with, and until you kind of push the boundaries of that comfort, you don't really know where you're.
That's really interesting. What do you think the perception of some of the perceptions? Because when I first saw some of the content, I thought it was fucking hilarious. Like some of the stuff you're putting out, and so out there. Do you know what I mean? Which is brave, and I massively respect bravery. What are some of the things that you say people may who've seen PerfectTed think of Teddie or Marrissa, which is so wrong versus who you actually are? Did you see what I'm saying?
We had this discussion last week. It was it's really hard when I'm in a piece of content and people are taking the piss out of me, which I'm totally fine. Like I have self-deprecating humor in general anyway. But then I'm going into a buyer meeting and I'm negotiating, because I do a lot of the commercial with Shani. Yeah. I'm then negotiating, trigger funding and all this kind of stuff. And that buyer's then seen me a week before with my top off, getting shot with a paintball gun. So that balance is tough. I think, let me tell you how I think people perceive me and the biggest disparity. I think people think that I am always happy and always positive and very flirty. And what else? Where I think the disparity is that when I'm at work, I'm very focused, and Marrissa can
unless it's his 5 o'clock witching hour.
Yeah,
Ron
told me about this.
At which time he kind of goes a little like haywire and lets loose. But
I can be very serious.
Yeah.
I'm very ambitious and hungry, as we keep coming back to, and I think people just see the jokes aside. We did a piece of work for a retailer. I was super proud of it. We'd spent weeks on it, everything from data to understanding the category, etc. We presented it, and all they wanted to talk about was Dragon's Den. And that was actually, it's amazing, right? It's a great brand opportunity, but that fucking hurts. Like, we're more than Dragon's Den. We're more than two people that got their 14 minutes of fame. And it sounds like I'm like victimizing myself, but truthfully, it's so frustrating when people perceive you or pigeonhole you into a certain thing. And then also the biggest challenge is if you're having a bad day, well then there's such a disparity between Teddie, the positive guy that people see on social media, and Teddie who's having a tough day, and that's
it's a really interesting, tricky landscape to navigate, because on the one part, totally get completely agree with you. On the other part, doing those things, getting shot by a paintball gun with your top off. 99% of founders don't have the bollocks to do that, like straight up. And it's like, but what you're saying is super interesting. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say
a few more things, and we'll wrap this up.
I think what we've realized is like we have different platforms for different purposes, and we're trying to be a bit more measured with our approaches to each platform. And so LinkedIn, for instance, is a professional platform where we showcase, you know, learnings and advice for other people that we can bring value to. I think Instagram now is more like a place where you can learn about the brand, the people behind it, the people that we're fueling, the products. And so we have a lot of different content that we're trying to fit into one platform. And then TikTok will reserve for more fun kind of style of content. But I think what we've realized is, you know, I run our marketing and branding, and part of that is our content. And so I have put Teddie in a lot of these positions that he has since voiced that he's not comfortable with, because the brand is called PerfectTed. And I think that, again, you kind of need a face to the brand. And it would make sense that the face is the name that is in the brand. But what we have also realized is that this product exists because of my story. And what we're trying to do now more is showcase my story and why the product exists. And a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from people who are like, we want to see more about, you know, why Marrissa created it and why the drink has helped her, because in turn that can help other people. And so we're trying to figure out this approach where we're balancing all of this together.
Talk to me about Levi, because I know he's the other pillar of this brand, right? Your brother, your future husband. What role does he play in the business? Because I think I'd love to understand and not give him some spotlight, but like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Understand, because how he
plays a massive part. He
just don't know but what do people not understand or see? Do you know what I mean?
I think people don't see the amount of, he essentially is working 2 jobs.
Right.
He is non-stop, and often he is put in a position where he's the mediator. When you have 2 founders that have 2 different ideas about a certain decision or route or path, he's often the one that kind of steers us to a mutual understanding.
I would also say he's like the energizer, because he's not frequently in the office at all. The team love him. He'll come in and he's so excited to be here that he's just full of positive energy, and he's just, you know, making everyone feel good, really trying to get involved in what we're doing, because I think he feels a bit of FOMO sometimes by not always being here. So when he comes in, it's just so positive, and he's obviously, I think.
What's the biggest barmy you've had? And you guys have been super honest, so I really appreciate this. But I'd love to know what's been the biggest barmy argument. Sorry, me being British.
I don't even know what barmy was.
Sorry, that was me being silly.
I thought you meant bar mitzvah.
Sorry, argument you've had, like, between you guys.
I have 2 come to mind. One was Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we got approached by the producers, it was 5 days before the filming date, and I just experienced crippling anxiety about this, and I didn't want to go on, and I probably dropped out like 3 times, and it got to the point where Teddie and I were screaming at each other, both crying, and we finally came to the decision that I would join, and I had to stick to my word.
I basically was like, you can't keep flip-flopping, you're either doing it or you're not, and it was her anxiety that was playing up. But truthfully, there comes a point also where it's about the business.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry that you're going through those anxious moments, but we're going on Dragon's Den in front of national TV, and we've got a lot of money at stake. We need to focus on this. And so I rewrote the pitch, and it was just me. So I'd rewritten the pitch that we were meant to deliver together as my own pitch, and I was practicing, and she comes upstairs, she's like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm like, you're not doing it. She's like, what do you mean? I said, we agreed you're not doing it. You pulled out. I'm focusing. Leave me alone. Yeah. Literally in that kind of
see a lot of energy coming out. Yeah. And how much before the actual?
This is like 3 days before.
No, it was like 2 days. It was like the day before, maybe.
Yeah. So we learnt our numbers, but we hadn't written our pitch.
until like 2 days before.
Yeah.
This was the day before, I recall.
We were like, let's just focus on learning the business, and then the pitch will come naturally a couple of days before, which is what happened.
Yeah. And then how did you muster up the courage? Because I think a lot of people listening to this will have fear.
Yeah.
Fear is essential for growth.
Yeah.
How did you get onto the TV program? You get 5 yeses, you get investment from Steven Bartlett.
I actually think what Teddie said about don't think about yourself, think about the business, and that putting a much larger purpose in front of me just made me kind of lose all fear, because I was like, it's about the business, it's not about me. Like, stop thinking about your anxiety, it's about the business. Like, even this morning, you know, I had a speaking event and we found out some news right beforehand that I was, again, a little bit rocked by. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to do the speaking event. My head's not in the right space. Was it my best talk? No, not at all. But did I maybe get a few people to convert to drinking PerfectTed? Hopefully, yeah, that's the intention. It's for the business. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's about the business. And I that's what I put first and foremost before everything.
A few more questions and then we'll let you run takes. I know you've got to go, mate. If you were your best friend, what would you say to yourself?
Generally?
If you were your best friend, as in what advice?
Yeah.
Bro, like, chill out and appreciate what you're building. I don't nearly appreciate that enough. You know, tomorrow I'm speaking at King's College, and we're being asked to speak as the keynote speaker at ITSU, for example, at their head office, and we get these amazing opportunities, and I think it's as a result of what we've built and the hard work that we put in and the teams put in. And I think it's so cliche, but I absolutely don't appreciate that enough.
I think my friends would say...
No, if you were your best friend.
Oh,
so
if I was my best friend.
Yeah, because I think it's basically, it's just an interesting frame to how to kind of get out of your own head and look at yourself from an objective standpoint.
Yeah. I would say believe in yourself a bit more. I think sometimes I doubt my ability to do certain things, and when you're really feeling a bout of anxiety, it's so easy to become so singularly focused on whatever that is giving you anxiety. You forget about your life's experience that has prepared you for this moment, and that you have actually gone through so many more things that are way more difficult and emotionally trying than this particular situation. And it's just about really trying to maintain that perspective throughout everything.
What's one truth you staunchly believe that most people would disagree with you on?
I feel like this is illegal. We should have had time to prepare these questions. I can go first. As crazy as this sounds, I feel like the story has been written, whether that's like my life story or PerfectTed. Yeah, my general life story. I feel like that's not to say that I feel like everything is predetermined and I don't have control over the outcome. I think the opposite. I just think that there is only so much that we can control. And I guess that kind of plays into the numbness, is like, there are people that get upset about things because they think that, oh no, that has changed the course of their future, or that has negatively impacted their present. But as crazy as it sounds, I really just think that it's part of the journey. And that's why I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I don't sweat the small stuff. And actually, Steven Bartlett has kind of rebelled against this, and he talks about how the best leaders really do sweat the small stuff and really focus on the details, and that's the difference. The difference is in the details. But I also think that it's very easy as a founder to think that the problem is you need a rebrand, or the problem is that buyer hates you. It's very easy to play the victim, and I never want to play the victim. If a buyer doesn't like the product, I'll refine the product, I'll tweak the product. We'll wait till another buyer comes in, or I'll find a way to convert that buyer into liking the product.
we'll come to you in a second, but you've actually, there's one question I was meant to ask, and I basically almost completely forgot. Thanks, Teddie. Is what do you disagree with Steven Bartlett on about brand building? If you don't.
Let me think of how to put this correctly.
I actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to take this one.
Sure, you take that one, but let me think.
Because I think that, again, it goes back to my point of our brand being nuanced and having values that might even conflict with one another at times. And that's okay, because do you have values that conflict with each other at times? Probably. And do you have to then choose in that moment which value, outweighs the other value? Yes. But that's, again, like a human. And so I think the way that we view our brand, again, is like a human. I'll give you an example. We posted a recipe video for Rice Krispies, for a matcha Frankenstein Rice Krispie for Halloween. And Steven engaged with us in a really interesting conversation about our values and said, you're switching to this messaging about healthy energy, and if healthy is becoming so prominent in your messaging and such an integral value to your brand, why are you putting out a recipe that is seemingly unhealthy? Is that aligned with your brand values? And I think that the way that we define healthy is moderation, and that everything in moderation is okay, and do what makes you happy, because if you live too rigid of a lifestyle, that is probably not conducive to feeling positive energy, right? The way that you feel positive is by doing things you love, engaging with content you love, making recipes you love. And we're not saying make Frankenstein Rice Krispie matcha recipes every day. We're saying enjoy it once in a while, on Halloween once a year.
Yeah, I love that. You can have contradicting values, and I think humans are that. What would you say yours is, Teddie? I know you wanted a little time to think, but
I don't think it's a difference in terms of marketing. I think the thing that I want to clear up about about Steven specifically is, I think, just to the point of when we go into meetings and people want to talk about Dragon's Den, I think people undervalue the amount of work that the team behind the scenes has put in driving the success of the brand. And it would be easy for people to be like, well, you've got Steven's face on it, and so that's probably a big reason for the success. I would disagree. I think it's been great, and I think it's poured fuel on the fire. But I think the success of PerfectTed has been because of the team, and whether we succeed or not in achieving our mission of making PerfectTed the largest natural energy player in the world will be down to whether we can execute as a team or not. Him, agencies, external parties, third parties, manufacturers, whoever we work with, are not going to control the destiny of PerfectTed. It will be us, because, yeah.
And I mean, it's testament. Like, we're in here now. It's almost 8:30. Well, no, 20 to 8. I know you've got to go at 22. 3 minutes. And some of the team are upstairs. You can hear them looking about. It's a testament to that. Do you know what I mean? Of how hard someone's working. And I actually think about the perception thing. There's a lot of people think, went on Dragon's Den, Steven Bartlett, and it's like, that's bullshit. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, come spend a day in our office and you'll see the relentless persistence.
Final one to end, because I've loved this. It's been super fun.
Yeah, us too. Loved it.
What was your one truth? The PerfectTed's rubbing off my brain. I need some more. One truth that you believe, Marrissa, that most people disagree with you on.
I don't know if most people would disagree, but I really do think hard work pays off. I really believe that in my soul. Like, if you apply yourself to one thing, and you work your butt off to achieve that, I really think the thing is, it's about timeline, because it might not take a day, but it could take a few years, but you will get there. Like, I really believe that. I believe that in my soul. And I think that some people think a lot of it is up to chance and luck and whatever. But I really think like you have so much more control over your life than you allow yourself to think you do, because people don't want to have personal accountability. They don't want to feel like their decisions are directly responsible for their outcomes in life. And I think that like there is no one else that is in charge of your life than you. It's not your partner, it's not your parents' fault, it's not your children's fault, it's you. And you are solely responsible for the mentality that you have, the attitude that you carry every day with yourself to work, to family events, to social outings. It's you. It's up to you.
Our generation are really good at a few things. TikTok, one of them. But another thing is like just passing accountability onto someone else, passing the buck, and blame. And I've done it before in my life. I'll do it often, even today, whether it's like missing a workout, whatever. There is so much more, I think, that we can control than we think. And that, again, can be perceived as maybe a toxic belief. And maybe that's why a lot of people would disagree with it. But again, 5% idea, 5% luck, 90% execution. Mm-hmm. It may not happen with PerfectTed, but I guarantee you will hopefully see something great out of us. And hopefully we'll be able to achieve our mission. But if it's not with this idea and this product and this whatever, we'll be relentless in pursuing the next one.
Let's close that conversation here and maybe have one a few years down the line when the rocket ship's even further. Like, guys, absolute joy. I think, like, genuinely coming here today, as you said, comes to the fucking office. Yeah. I found that this has like inspired me to go harder, just way harder. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We loved it.
We've been listening to Hungry for ages, and honestly, like, I remember you spoke at Bread and Jam a year and a half ago, and the nuggets of information you were just spitting.
Purple elephant, baby.
I mean,
Purple cow.
Close enough.
Yeah. I was just.
I can't take credit for that. That's Seth.
I took photos of your slides.
Yeah, I was really just. I was so impressed, and kudos to you. Well done on such a fantastic podcast.
Yeah, massively inspiring.
It's clear that you've been putting in a lot of work. So.
Well, thank you so much. Right, I'll hit that button.